Good afternoon, folks. Hopefully, you're having a great day. This is Sasha from Transplant Nation. I just had a really interesting conversation with Miss Shirley Brill of E.M.A.T., which stands for Educating Minority About Transplant. She has a great nonprofit organization that talks about different transplant for minority and people of color. Please stay tuned and listen to what she has to say. She's also a double lung transplant recipient like myself. I'll see you soon. Thank you. Good afternoon, folks. This is Sasha from Transplant Nation. Today, I have a very special guest. I got Miss Shirley Brill with me of E.M.A.T. Inc., and she will tell us about that. But at first, I would love to introduce Miss Brill. She is a double lung transplant recipient back in 2008. Folks, we're going on 16 years. I'm a recently double lung transplant recipient myself about 2.5 years ago, and there are a lot of trials and tribulation. But Miss Brill here, looking great. She's been at it for over 16 years, and I definitely want to hear what her story is. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me. How are you? How are you feeling?
Good afternoon. I feel just absolutely wonderful. And thank you so much for inviting me on.
It is my pleasure. It is my pleasure because you're doing so many great things with your nonprofit. Like I said, we're going to get into it. But I kind of want to hear your background first because, uh, you know, my situation happened about, like I said, 2.5 years ago. So can you tell my audience how did you know something was wrong with you back in '08, or is it something that preceded in your childhood? Tell us a quick little background on your story, please.
Well, for me, it started in 2005. I was an elementary school teacher, and my classroom was the last door upstairs on the left, which was not usually a problem for me. But what I started noticing first was the shortness of breath. Now, I've always been a little healthy girl, but I just said probably I just need to lose some weight or I put on a few extra pounds or something. But it seemed like the shortness of breath continued and it wasn't getting any better. So after a little bit of time, I said, well, if I feel a shortness of breath one more time, I was in church one Sunday afternoon. I said that I'd just go to the emergency room and let somebody check it out.
Okay.
And that was the start for me. Like I said, my first symptom was the shortness of breath. And I was glad that I had that. And I guess that's one problem that we all have with lungs. Eventually, that will show up in us. So you can't breathe, which led me back to my primary care doctor. And I'm so grateful for him because he was the one that initially placed me on oxygen. And I think that's what made the difference for me. He immediately saw a problem, started me on 2 liters, which helped tremendously. And once we saw that that was not doing anything for me, he referred me on to my pulmonologist. And from the pulmonologist, it still wasn't getting better. The pulmonologist, since he deals with lung disease, told me that I had interstitial lung disease initially. And as the situation started getting worse, I went from, of course, 2 liters, 4 liters, 6 liters, finally to the point where he said, you're going to need a lung transplant.
Oh, wow.
And nobody wants to hear anything like that because, I had heard of a lung transplant. But certainly you never think that something like that would happen to you. So I jokingly told him, I said, well, I respect what you're saying, but you can't be correct on this one. Not I. I know I don't need a lung transplant.
I know.
And,
That's one of the stages. Yep.
And then, of course, I told him, well, I need to get a second opinion because, I don't know where this is coming from. And I did. He referred me to someone to get a second opinion. And of course, they came back with the same thing. Even with the x-rays, I could see the scarring in my lungs. I ended up having pulmonary fibrosis. As a matter of speaking, it was idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis because we don't know where it came from. I was
Exactly.
fine one day. Then all of a sudden, like I said, going up and down those stairs became such a difficult task for me that it got to the point where it was very obvious. And even in church, the least little thing I would do caused shortness of breath. And of course, it got to the point of skipping from 2005 to 2008. Um, I ended up with end stage lung disease.
Oh,
And
wow.
yep, that was the diagnosis then, and was placed on the transplant list. That was January of 2008. I'm very thankful that in May of 2008, I received that double lung transplant, and I was up to like 15 liters of oxygen, which I
Mm.
thought at one time was high. But I've talked to some people since that time who've told me they are on 30 liters of
Yeah,
oxygen. I can't even imagine that
I
because
know.
I know what, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I was gonna say I myself I got up to 22. So
Ooh.
even okay, so yeah, and I was hospitalized before a transplant for about 2.5 months. But let me ask you, so so that must have been a very hard thing to do because like that was my first reaction. My first reaction was denial. I'm like, what are you talking about? Okay, that
Mm-hmm.
was my first reaction. I'm like, you can't be serious, and I'm going through my head, I don't do this, I don't do that, I'm just trying to make sense of it all. But once you actually, kind of calm down and you're looking at the data itself, and it's inarguably, for me, it was pulmonary hypertension, idiopathic pulmonary hypertension. Okay. So I I can definitely empathize with that. But between that time from you being on oxygen and increasing with your oxygen before you even put on the transplant, what was it like? What was the conversation like as far as like, for you, for your family, your loved ones? Because it's something that's totally new. It's one thing, like, okay, I'm taking oxygen. It's another thing they say, okay, they're gonna put you on the list to get a transplant. I mean, that must be a very scary proposition, wasn't it?
It was, but I think with lungs, the scary part is if you don't get your lungs.
Mm,
Because I tell people all the time with kidneys, they have an option. They can always have dialysis.
mm-hmm,
But with us in the lung transplant world, we have no
mm-hmm,
option. If those
mm-hmm.
lungs don't come in time, then we know what the other result is.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
like I said, it was a scary time, but I'm fortunate because I had a very good support group.
Mm-hmm,
uh, I have two daughters, and my two daughters didn't live in the city. They were in Memphis. I was fortunate because I did have a son here in town, and I had a circle of friends who was very supportive of me during the time. They were my strength and my backbone at the time.
mm-hmm,
Of course, my daughters would come into town to check on me, but for that regular care, getting the doctor's appointments, transportation. It was those caregivers who
mm-hmm.
did that for me. And like I said, my church family, they were very supportive. That's very important because that helps and keeps you mentally strong. That's a big part of it. You
That's
have to
right.
stay strong. You have to have, I don't know about anybody else, I can't speak for them, but I have faith
Mm-hmm,
that God would not let the end result be death for me.
mm-hmm,
And, we just have to hold on to our faith. It would get so bad. And I tell people now, even just to lift your arm
mm-hmm.
takes oxygen. I would share with
Yes.
them because at that time I was a minister of music at my church. And
Mm-hmm,
I never stopped playing. I stayed faithful because I was going to give to God what he deserved.
mm-hmm,
But if service started at 10 o'clock, then I would have to get up at 5 o'clock just to
mm,
make sure that I could shower and brush my teeth. Because once you get so far into that lung disease, it takes a lot out of you just to move, just to shower. I ended up with a shower chair. You couldn't
mm-hmm.
even stand because you didn't
Yeah.
have the energy. And, you know, a lot of things became difficult to do, the simple things that we just take for granted. I would have never thought that my life would have made that turn. Um, and it's good to see that. You know, some people won't understand that. I kind of appreciate being there because it gives you more of an appreciation for life. The things that we take for granted, you just wake up one day and you can't breathe. Can you imagine?
Listen, I know, and I have been through it, and it is so very important that you mentioned that, because having caregivers are so crucial for not just our mental or physical well-being as well, you know, because like you said, you want to focus on trying to get yourself better. So the little intangible parts around you that, you know, we took for granted. And then now, once you're in a disease that you, every time you have to take a few steps, you know, it's a labor. Every time you have to take a shower, you got to get dressed. People don't understand that part. And that's one of the very important things that I really am grateful, you know, for the people in my life that were there for me, because there are times it's almost like you turn into a baby. It's almost like you turn into a baby. And that's very important for people to understand that the power that caregivers have and how much they help us you know, to get better, not just physically, but also mentally, because mentally, like you said, you have to be sharp, you have to be there. Whether it's your faith in you, your faith in your God, whichever it is, but you got to be mentally strong. And that's one thing really, you know, I find out throughout the trials and tribulations. So, Miss Brill, now you got listed. Do you remember how long once you got listed that you got your transplant? How long did it take?
I think it really started happening for me once I got that diagnosis of end-stage lung disease, because I guess you have to get to a certain point.
Yeah.
As long as you're, I don't want to use the term livable because that may not make sense, but once the struggle gets so bad, I would think it moves you up on the list.
Yes, yes, because it's
And
an emergency. It becomes an emergency situation. Absolutely.
right. And I really don't think people realized how sick I really was, because I didn't stop teaching until the very end. You know, I was very devoted to my class. I had oxygen tanks in the trunk of my car everywhere I went. I continued church. I continued teaching until it got to the point where I always said, well, once I get my children, at that time, it was the FCAT. Once I get them past the FCAT, then I'm going to pull on out, because it got more difficult to get up in the mornings to even get to work.
Sure.
So once you reach that part, you know, it's just a matter of the weight, which is another conversation by itself. Okay, now I'm to a point where I can't even work. I have to sit at home and just wait for that call, which is another mental issue, because now you know somebody's life will end. And because of that person, you get a second chance at life. So that takes another toll on you, because you don't want anybody to have to make that sacrifice for you. But out of the goodness of their heart, they've signed up to be an organ donor. And that's what's so very important to me now. You know, that's why I encourage that. But had that person, I don't know who my person was, but you're just forever grateful to that person. I always acknowledge God first, because I know He's the one that made the way for me. But then He also opened the door for that person to say yes.
No, absolutely. It is an incredible, I mean, April is Donors Awareness Month, and we all know that. But it is an incredible cycle of life, right? In order for those of us who are privy and lucky to get a second chance, somebody had to make the ultimate sacrifice. I mean,
Indeed.
it's a very powerful and it's a very humbling thing when you think about it. That's why, like, when it's my anniversary, quote unquote, long anniversary, it's a time for me to reflect. You know what I mean? It's a time of hope and, I'm happy and everything else, but it's more of a reflection, thinking about the donors and their family as well. So, yeah, absolutely. You're 100% right. Uh, so I know you're going on 16 years, which is very impressive. Like I said, congratulations again. Can you just give me a little brief synopsis what your journey was like? You don't have to get into too many details, but I know with transplant, especially the lung transplant, the first 5 years are very crucial. That's what, my doctors, I hear other people say the first years are very crucial. I mean, not that the rest is not, but the first 5 years as your body's getting acclimated, to your new lungs, your environment, and so forth and so on. How was your journey like, from like once you got transplanted, you're recovering? Just take us to your journey, that gets you to like almost 16 years, Ms. Brill.
Well, believe it or not, that's going to be very simple.
Mm.
Um, after receiving my transplant, I received that transplant in May. In August, I was back to work. Um,
No, really?
August, I was
Oh
back
my
to work. I
gosh.
still had to leave work early. I had a wonderful principal. I had to
Hmm.
leave work early and go to rehab because, of
Hmm.
course, you have to learn those things that will strengthen your lungs and
Absolutely.
teach you how to
Pulmonary rehab.
breathe and
Yep.
things like that.
Hmm.
But other than that, that's not too much more I can tell you because I have not been admitted back into the hospital. I've had no problems. I've had a perfect set of lungs.
Oh
My
my Lord.
transplant team takes very good care of me. I don't know if I should mention them, but I have to always give a shout out to the transplant team of Mayo Clinic,
Absolutely.
Jacksonville,
Go ahead.
Florida.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Let me tell
I
you
will
something.
sing their praises because they take very good care of me.
Well,
But
let me.
I
Mhm.
haven't had any problems.
Wow. Listen, then you are blessed beyond. I mean, seriously, you are God bless. You are blessed beyond because from talking to different people, belong to different groups, some people have a lot of challenges. And I'm one right in front of you right now. I'm going to a phase. I mean, I don't look it, but my team's worried about rejection. So I had to had like 3 straight days of prednisone IV of over 1,250 milligram. Now I'm doing 70 milligram of prednisone, and they want to do what they call IVIG because they feel like the donor's antibodies started to fight back. So there are so many different things that can happen, and that's a beautiful thing. I mean, listen, so there's nothing else I can ask you about that because you are blessed beyond. So in that breath, let's segue to what you're doing right now because I discovered you online. You have your organization, E.M.A.T. Inc. Can you please let us know? It's a nonprofit organization, and it's not just, I mean, you're a lunch recipient, but try to also help, the Black community to send a voice because I I realized that African Americans are like 4 times more likely to develop like kidney failure, you know, more, than Caucasians, for example. So we have a lot of issues within the Black community. I see that your nonprofit organization addresses not just lung, kidney, liver. Please let us know about that, Ms. Bro.
Well, educating minorities about transplants incorporated first started because I was in a meeting, a multicultural task force meeting
Mhm.
in 2015. And the statistics that they were reading among African Americans was absolutely alarming. There are so many myths and misconceptions that circulate in the African American community that I think it affects our giving. And we know, like you just said, it's our people who are suffering because we keep holding on to those things generation after generation. One of the main ones is that they're not going to try to save you if something should happen. And of course,
Mhm.
we know that's not true. And because I'm a recipient I can stand boldly and say, the things that you hear, you can't believe what you see on TV. That's entertainment. They may throw some facts in, but if you want to really know if it makes a difference, then you need to talk to somebody who has experienced it.
That's right.
And that's why I went home and started a Facebook page, just to get information out. I felt like I owed that to my donor for giving me that second chance. Then I'm going to share the truth with as many people as I can. And not just for lung transplants, for transplants in general, because
Exactly.
the need is so great, especially with kidneys. People think I've had a kidney transplant. No, but there's so many people out there who need that kidney transplant. So like I say, we started the Facebook page. And at that time, there was a gentleman, Walter Hill, who started the organization with me. His wife was also a transplant recipient, and she was very supportive during that time. She ended up getting 2 transplants, lung transplants. And
Oh,
like I
wow.
said, she was my model or somebody. The good thing was when I had questions, doctors are good. They can tell you from a medical standpoint.
That's right.
But
That's
as
right.
far as somebody who's lived the experience, it's good to have somebody to say, such and such happened to me. You're scared, you're worried, you don't know what's going to happen. And to have somebody to say, look, that happened to me too. You need to do this, calm down, relax. And of course, the bottom line is always contact your transplant team.
That's right. That's right.
Don't try to self-diagnose. Don't treat yourself. You don't have a white jacket or a degree. Talk to your transplant team and let them know what's going on. And today, I'm the same way. If anything, if I feel strange in any way, then I'm going to call and contact them. I've
That's
just
right.
been blessed so far. And another thing is, I take my medicine. Every now and then. I won't say I've never missed any because I'm sure everybody has missed a dose at some time. Things happen. But usually 98% of the time, my medicine is taken just like they prescribe it to me. There are times sometimes when they may have to adjust it when I go in for my checkups,
Sure,
which is
sure,
usually
sure.
twice a year. But other than that, no problems. E.M.A.T. is there to do the same thing for others. In the organization, there are kidney recipients, living donors, caregivers, donor families, everything associated with the transplant community is in the group. If someone needs to talk to somebody, it's someone there who can share that information with them. Just a listening ear sometimes is all you need. It can be the encouragement for you. Oh, you'll be okay. And it sounds so simple, but when you're really going through on that journey, that's very important to hear. And they're speaking from experience, not somebody, how some people just try to encourage you, which is kind,
Sure. Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
You appreciate it. Thank you so
But
much.
let me tell you something. And I really took to heart what you're saying, and that's why I myself I'm doing this as far as talking to transplant recipients, just to get their point of view, because I remember, when I was sick, yes, I had all my doctors, I had my family, but I had no one that went through it because at the time it was scary. Because at the time it was 2021, COVID was still out there, so I couldn't get people to come to see me. It was just like, one person at a time. So things were tough out there. So I felt at the time when I was laying in a hospital, I was on high flow from the 22 at home. It wasn't enough. So I was on high flow oxygen, and there were a lot of lonely times. I really wish like at the time there was somebody that I knew that went through it that I could speak about, that I could speak to. And I really think what you're doing is really exceptional because there's a difference with when somebody's been through something and then somebody is waiting or is a patient can talk to that person, can even chat. Like right now, I started to do some mentoring, to some other people that are evaluating whether they're gonna do a transplant or not. So I really think it is very important and crucial for us to give back, but as well to have that communication for to people that are either looking for a transplant, waiting for a transplant, or just kind of want to know what the whole experience is like. I really think that's important. And your site, you do a tremendous job because you have the donors recognition, you got the caregiver recognition, you have the living donors. I really think I really wanted to talk to you because I think you're really doing a tremendous job just bringing that awareness out there. That and that is a wonderful thing. So tell me, what I guess it seemed like it's been very fulfilling to you. What keeps you going? What keeps you going to keep doing this job? Because I know it's not easy. Because I'm starting on my own, and trust me, I know it's not easy. It's not that, but you got to have a really a love and a determination to keep going. What keeps you going, Miss Bro?
I think it's really the need in our community. It's so many parts of getting to where you need a transplant, especially those who need a kidney, the greatest
Mhm.
need of all, because our organization now is focusing on Your Health Matters. And that is because of there are some things that you can do so you won't get in that situation. Let's take a look at prevention. We're
Mhm.
starting out with nutrition a lot of times, and this is across the board because I didn't mention before I could even get my transplant, I had to lose 90 pounds.
Mm.
And that's because of my eating habits. And after about 16 years, I'm about to get those 90 pounds back. But we really have to take a serious look at doing better at nutrition. And not just us, but the generations coming behind us. We have to
Exactly.
change those eating habits. So
Mhm.
maybe when they get to be adults, they'll have a healthier lifestyle, not just nutrition, but then we're going to take a look at physical activity. Because once you get to a certain age, I just had a birthday, woohoo!
Happy
And
birthday!
thank you. And at
Congratulations.
68, I noticed that I am slowing down. I spend a lot of time at home. Of course, I'm working with E.M.A.T., but
Mhm.
instead of getting out walking around the block, then I'd rather sit here and work on whatever I'm doing. So we have to get physically and stay
Mhm.
physically active.
Mhm.
Our last thing is mental health because that's very important. A lot of times people will not let you know that there are things going on mentally. They don't want to share because, that's the first thing they say. Oh, she's crazy or so and so and so. So
Mhm.
people will keep those things inside. We have to learn to talk about those things to someone that you trust. That's what we want to look at this year. But as far as, and I just stay on kidneys because last year we initiated Lobby Day.
Mm.
And in talking with some of the people uh, in the dialysis centers, and I don't know about where you stay, but here in my city, you can almost find a dialysis center at least every 2 or 3 miles, and sometimes not even that far,
Mm.
especially in our community. There's at least three right here in my area, and that's because there are so many people on dialysis. How do we combat that? We're going to have to come up with some strategies, and it's
Mhm.
going to take us getting out in the community, sharing our stories, and talking to the people. Some of them have even said, well, I don't know anybody who's had a kidney transplant. So,
Mm.
of course, when our kidney people go out, and I have to give a shout out to the members of E.M.A.T. who are here in the city, because when we go out in the community, it makes such a difference, like we've said. When they said, I've had a kidney transplant, and
That's
then
right.
they'll share the reason, or whatever it may be, kidney, pancreas, lung transplant. A lot of people tell me, I didn't even know they could do that.
Mhm.
Well,
it's great to have the testimonials, like I said before, of people that been through things, that lend a voice to it. And you're right, there are a lot of stigma within communities. Like you said, you know, whether it's from generation, people don't talk about things, people just keep things to themselves. I mean, but awareness is key to it. Awareness is key to it, not just the people going through it, but like you said, the generation coming from behind. It's each one teach one, basically. And I think yeah, I really think that it's a really, really wonderful idea. And you're doing a great job, and I really want to applaud you again for that. I really want to applaud you again for that. Well, right now we're gonna take a small break, and then we're gonna come back with Miss Shirley Brill of E.M.A.T. because I have a couple of questions I want to ask her. We'll see you soon.